شعت شموس الهدي بالكلمات فأنارت الأفهام بالآيات أسرج بنور العلم عقلا.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. عن الإمام رضا عليه السلام, he says, شيعتنا المسلمون لأمرنا الآخذون بقولنا المخالفون لأعدائنا فمن لم يكن كذلك فليس منا. The Shias are those who submit to the Imams, those who take our sayings, and those who oppose our enemies. And whoever is not like that, that is not one of us. From this hadith, we know there are three qualities for Shia. Those who claim that they are Shias must know that Imam Rida alayhi salam has put in qualities for Shias. And it is for us to submit to the Imams, whatever they say and command. We take their sayings and we oppose their enemies. And if we don't do so, then we're not from them. Meaning we're not from the Shias. From this hadith, I wanted to relate this hadith to the Fatimi hijab and address my dear sisters who listen to me worldwide to understand the meaning of the hijab. Some ladies assume that hijab is a piece of cloth that we wear on top of our heads today. And this piece of cloth in the Arabic word is called maqna'a. It's not the proper meaning of the hijab. Hijab actually is what covers the beauty of a woman. Hajib, hujub, hijab. It's something that segregates between both men and women. Something that covers the beauty of the woman. Thus, wearing the piece of maqna'a and putting it on top of our head and putting on makeup is not considered as a hijab. It's considered as wearing a maqna'a. When you wear a maqna'a and skinny jeans and trousers, that's not the Islamic hijab that covers the beauty of a woman. Anything that is beautiful has to be hidden and unseen. The best example of hijab is the hijab of our beloved Fatima Al-Zahra alayhi salam. The believing sisters who claim to be the followers of Ahlul Bayt have to follow the women of Ahlul Bayt. And on the head of them is the lady Fatima Al-Zahra alayhi salam. I'll give you an example of Fatima Al-Zahra alayhi salam, but this is a well-known narration that isn't speculated. All of you know that when Abu Bakr and Umar, what they did to Lady Fatima Al-Zahra alayhi salam, they took away fadak from her. Fatima Al-Zahra went out to argue against them in a glorious and well-known speech. The question is, how did she go out? And pay attention and focus on the narration that is mentioned in the book of Ihtijaj al-Tabrasi. It says, when Abu Bakr and Umar went out together in preventing Lady Fatima Al-Zahra alayhi salam from fadak, and when the news reached her, لَاثَتْ خِمَارَهَا عَلَى رَأْسِهَا. She folded the veil on her head. What is a veil? It's a head cover that covers the face also. So it's in the replacement of what's called a bushiyya, or a replacement of what's called a niqab. But what's amazing here is that the narration does not say that Fatima Al-Zahra put the veil on her face. It says لَاثَتْ خِمَارَهَا, meaning she folded the veil. There's a difference between putting the veil and folding the veil. Lathat means she folded the veil twice across her face. Lady Fatima alayhi salam, when she wanted to go out, she did not want to just put the veil on. She folded it because she wanted the veil to be 2 layers, an additional covering, a precaution to the covering of her hijab. Thus, this was the first thing that she did. Was that enough for her? No. لَاثَتْ خِمَارَهَا عَلَى رَأْسِهَا. She folded the veil on her face. وَاشْتَمَلَتْ بِجِلْبَابِهَا. And she fully covered herself with a cloak. The jilbab is a cloak. This garment is the same as the abaya today that we wear today. Fatima Al-Zahra alayhi salam took her cloak and she fully covered herself with it. وَاشْتَمَلَتْ بِهِ. And she made her body covered with the jilbab. Was that enough for her? No. Lady Fatima Al-Zahra alayhi salam wanted to be covered even more. She wanted to present to us the highest level of hijab, to prevent the possibility of anyone looking at her. Despite that, Lady Fatima alayhi salam would rarely go out during her lifetime. She wouldn't go out only on rare occasions, and this was one of the occasions. Her habit otherwise was to stay at home. But when it was necessary to do something, she would go out. Just like this argument. against the oppressor. The narration says, وَاشْتَمَلَتْ بِجِلْبَابِهَا, and she fully covered herself with a cloak. وَأَقْبَلَتْ لُمَّ مِنْ حَفَدَتِهَا وَنِسَاءِ قَوْمِهَا. She gathered a group of allies, of women among her, from her relatives and family. That was the third thing that she did. Despite that she was fully covered, and she was at the highest level of the hijab, it wasn't enough for her. She gathered a group of ladies and women among her so that she wouldn't be seen. She wouldn't go out individually, but rather she was in a group of a center. And this wasn't even enough for her. The narration says, وَتَطَأْ ذُيُولَهَا, and she would step on the endings of her clothes. This shows and explains that she was wearing more than one cloak. ذُيُولَهَا, because the tail of her cloak is what comes to the ground. Fatima alayhi salam was stepping on those tails, ذُيُولَهَا, plural, meaning she was dressed more than one cloak. And the narrations say that she was stepping on those tails, the end of the tail of her cloak, which means that even her holy feet wasn't seen. And she didn't even lift it up. So she was stepping في ذيولها, on the tails of her cloak. Was that enough for Lady Fatima alayhi salam? Of course not. Her hijab was at the highest level. As soon as she arrived to Abu Bakr and Umar, she asked, the narration says, ما تخرم مشيتها عن مشية Rasoolollah. Her walk was exactly the same as the walk of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, until she entered the place which Abu Bakr was in a crowd of the Muhajirin and Al-Ansar. Here, فَنِيطَتْ دُونَهَا مُلَا. She ordered a sheet to be placed in front of her so that she wouldn't even be seen. She was in a crowd with her family and relatives. She was covered from head to toe, but she wanted a sheet to segregate between her and men so that they cannot view her. She didn't even want them to see her shadow. She was in complete hijab, the best hijab, the most modest and intense hijab, the highest level of hijab, and on top of that, she didn't accept that. She addressed Abu Bakr to order a sheet to be placed between her and him and the men. This is the hijab of Lady Fatima alayhi salam. This is the real Islamic hijab. Unfortunately, the widespread understanding among our women today is very wrong. We have to examine the hijab of Lady Fatima alayhi salam and pay attention to the narration of how she left her home to address a group of men. Do we really want to be Shi'as of Fatima and Ali or not? If we want to be from the Shi'as of Fatima alayhi salam, we must see the scales of the proper Islamic hijab. The commander of faithful Ali ibn Abi Talib speaks to his son Al-Hasan, and he says to him through a testament, cover your women and strengthen their hijab. Why? Because he says the strengthening the hijab is better for them. Raise your young daughters at a very young age to strengthen the hijab. We don't want half hijabis. We want proper hijabis. A similar hadith on Imam Ali alayhi salam, he says to Imam Hassan alayhi salam, strengthening the hijab is better for you and them. Not the typical hijab that we see today. This is what's required for those who want to follow Fatima Al-Zahra alayhi salam and Ahlul Bayt. We wear hijab and trousers and leggings and you say I'm covered and your body is showing. This isn't the right hijab. Because the abaya is the cloak, the jilbab. There is no narration from Ahlul Bayt alayhi salatu wasalam that say it's fine for a woman not to wear a cloak. It's not acceptable. Only for the elderly woman it's acceptable. من القواعد من النساء. And the Holy Quran says, والقواعد من النساء اللاتي لا يرجون نكاحا فلا جناح عليهم. As for the women past childbearings that do not wish any marriages, there's no blame of them if they put away their garments without any displaying any decorations. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam was asked about this verse. What does it mean? Al-Qawa'id min-Nisa, the women past childbearings would put aside their garments. The Imam answered saying that the women who are old, past childbearings, can put away their abaya, their cloak, but they shouldn't be wearing any zina, any decorations. Other than that, there's no narrations that says that we can put away our abaya or put away our cloak and wear dress and trousers and leggings. And this is why Imam Rida alayhi salam says, Shi'atuna المسلمون لأمرنا الآخذون بقولنا المخالفون لأعدائنا فمن لم يكن كذلك فليس منا. Shias are those who submit to the Imams, those who take our saying and those who oppose our enemies, and whoever is not like that then is not one of us. By all means, our hijab should be the Fatimi hijab, the hijab of our ladies of Ahlul Bayt. Many assume that she's a hijabi because she's covering her head in a mandil and a maqna'a, and then you go see them out with proper makeup, full makeup, this makeup trend that we see today. But you're wearing a hijab. Hijab and makeup don't come together. That's not a hijab. That's not considered as a hijab. Anything that covers beauty is a hijab. Anything beauty breaks the principle of the hijab. And it's the total opposite of the Fatimi hijab. The Shias who consider herself as the followers of Ahlul Bayt, her hijab should be, if not like, similar to the Fatimi hijab. I'll narrate to you a story and I'll conclude. One day a group of people from Kufa went to Imam Rida alayhi salam, and they knocked the door on Imam Rida and they told him that we are your Shias. When the Imam came out, he looked at them and he closed the door. The narration says that they were crying and wailing for 40 days. The Imam says, you're not our Shias. He closed the door on them. He left them in the courtyard for 40 days, crying and saying, we're your Shias, let us in. We're your Shias. The Imam did not let them in. And then one day, from those 40 days, they said, we're your lovers. We are the lovers of Ahlul Bayt. We show you affection. We love you. Then the Imam opened the door and then he said to them the narrations say that the Imam, Rida, when he let them in, he sat so close beside them that his knees touched their knees and he would welcome them. And then he told them, Shi'atina, al-musallimuna li-amrina, al-akhiduna bi-qawlina, فَمَنْ لَمْ يَكُنْ كَذَلِكَ فَلَيْسَ مِنَّا. And then the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, says, إِنَّ شِيعَتِنَا مَنْ شَيَّعَنَا وَاتَّبَعَ آثَارَنَا وَاقْتَدَى بِأَعْمَالِنَا. Our Shi'as are those who follow us and follow our footsteps and follow our deeds. Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam says, لا تذهب بكم المذاهب فوالله ما شيعتنا إلا من أطاع الله عز وجل. Do not be deceived by sects, for by God our Shi'as are only those who obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Almighty and the Sublime. By all means, our dear ladies, our dear sisters, to become the Shi'as of Ahlul Bayt and the Shi'as of Fatima Al-Zahra alayhi salam, we must fix our hijab. We must fix our hijab. We became hijabi role models. We tried to fit in the hijabi trends, the makeup trends. And slowly, we became nothing like the hijab of Fatima Al-Zahra alayhi salam. Even the jilbab, the aba'a, we threw it away as if it's not even wajib. Where the Holy Quran says and speaks to the wives of the prophets, يَا أَيُّهَا النَّبِيِّ قُلْ لِأَزْوَاجِكَ وَبَنَاتِكَ وَنِسَائِكَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ يُدْنِينَ عَلَيْهُنْ مِنْ جَلَابِيبِهِنَّ ذَلِكَ أَدْنَى أَنْ يُعْرَفْنَ فَلَا يُؤْذَيْنَ وَكَانَ اللَّهُ غَفُورًا رَحِيمًا. O Prophet, tell your wives and daughters and the women of the believers that they shall draw down their shawls over them. That will make it more likely that they are not recognized and for them not to be abused. And Allah is the most merciful. We don't have to be exactly like the hijab of Fatima Al-Zahra alayhi salam, but at least don't throw away your jilbab, your abaya, your cloak. At least let's try to examine the hijab of Fatima Al-Zahra alayhi salam. Cover your beauty. Anything that's beautiful, cover it. Leave that makeup trend, hijab and makeup trend. Because we want to be the Shi'as of Fatima Al-Zahra alayhi salam and the lovers of Ahlul Bayt and satisfy Ahlul Bayt and become their proper Shi'as. والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين.